start with saying thank you everybody for joining us for the fourth Innovate Now. My name's Ben. I'm going to be the host and I'm going to facilitate some very interesting and intelligent people saying true things about artificial intelligence. The agenda for tonight, as you can probably tell, we're going to have a panel discussion. Then we're going to have a break for some food and drinks, a little bit of networking. We've got food tonight from Curry Rolls. They won the Battle of the Curries at the Wylam Brewery last year, so very excited to get amongst that. Then after the food and drink, we're going to come back and we're going to do a little bit of Q&A, have some questions from you guys, and I'm going to probably do a couple to get things rolling as well. So I'll introduce the panelists. So to my most extreme right, we have Dr. Russell Collingham. Yeah. He's the head of engineering for us here at Hedgehog Lab. We have Helen Waller joining us from Accenture. Helen's the intelligent automation lead, and Alex Fawcett joining us from Sage. Alex is the product manager for bots and AI. So we'll get started straight into the questions, I think, if that's all right, guys. Yeah, cool. So I think probably the thing that I'd be most keen to start with, and maybe some people in the audience, would be what is AI? How do we define it at the moment?
Let the PhD.
I used to. This is my first lecture. It takes me back to define what AI is. You can come at it from several perspectives. From my perspective as an engineer, as a software developer, AI is trying to mimic intelligent human behaviour. We don't really care how we do it. We're not trying to understand the brain. We're not trying to understand how the eyes work or your ears or anything like that. We just want to try and mimic human behaviour, intelligent human behaviour in any way we can.
Yeah, exactly. So I would echo that exactly. You want to give a machine a human cognitive capability. So it's the ability to reason and the ability to generalise. And this isn't pre-programmed generalisation. This is generalisation based on historic information or data.
And I think there's kind of different flavours and different elements to that, and I totally agree with these guys. I think getting to that cognitive point is that real big stepping stone, and I think there's almost smaller pieces of intelligent automation that you can take along the way on that journey to that more human-like reasoning.
And I think something that we see closely grouped together with AI is this idea of machine learning as well. So I think it's quite common now that you'll see them grouped together much in the same way you can't hear AR without VR. Nowadays you really can't talk about AI without talking about ML at the same time. So just quickly touch on how we would differentiate the two.
So machine learning is a technique that you would apply to achieve AI, to solve an AI problem. So 20 years ago people would say the way to do AI is to build up an expert system, a rule-based system. We didn't have data, we didn't have compute power, so that was pretty much state of the art then. Eventually we started on learning algorithms. Now that's really, it's treated as one and the same, AI and machine learning, but it's actually just a technique for achieving an algorithm. Pretty successful at the moment.
Yeah, and I guess that success is the reason why it gets grouped together, because it is there's lots of techniques for AI. This is the one that's worked for most people, so this is the one that everyone talks about.
Yeah, I think that the point around the data is often key to that.
Yeah.
And where we're talking about sort of, I guess, various inputs of data and it coming to understand different types of data that we might be inputting into it, when we're talking, if we were sort of to incorporate things around speech and language understanding, like what are the entries to that? So how would you then, how does it come to understand
So speech is an interesting one because, like Helen said earlier, there are building blocks to build AI systems. So in order to do speech understanding, you first have to do speech recognition. So speaking, recognising words, typical error rates, the best ones are around 1 word in 20 in error at the moment. That doesn't mean you understand what was said. It doesn't mean that you can take an action based on what was said or answer a question. It just means that you've got some idea of what the words were that were spoken. So that's kind of one of the building blocks.
Geordie accents make it really, really difficult.
I'd argue that if you're looking at this as a problem and you're thinking, shall I build my own speech recognition engine? Probably not the right thing to do.
Completely.
There's lots and lots of ones out there. At Sage we use a couple, and we've tried a couple, and I think they have better cognitive capability than humans now. So don't build your own. There's plenty of services out there.
And what would a fairly common example of a speech recognition program be?
Well, a typical problem that you might try and solve is translation. So speech-to-speech translation has always been a goal of people in AI. So Skype and Microsoft's tried to introduce that. simultaneous translation. Google's doing a lot of research, English-Chinese translation recently. It's been very, very successful results.
Excellent.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say we use it around accessibility. So users of software who may have a particular disability or may use assistive software, we use a lot of speech recognition for them to be able to give the machine the commands that somebody else may typically type. So we use it in that regard as well. And
there's the obvious kind of Amazon Echo, Alexa type skills, and something we built at Sage, and I think we're chatting to some of the guys here, and something you're doing at Hedgehog as well. And that's one of the big, that's kind of normalised a lot of this technology.
Alexa's an interesting one because from a developer's point of view, Alexa, they don't actually tell you what they recognised. They don't give you the words just yet, the kind of full transcription, but you can still build a meaningful system based on working out the concepts and some of the key phrases that were mentioned. So they've still been able to build, you can still build intelligent Alexa skills without having perfect recognition.
Okay. And talking about, I suppose, things that are reasonably commonplace and that most people can sort of relate to in thinking about Amazon Alexa and things like that, I suppose for each of you I would ask, like, what is the most powerful or impressive implementation of AI that each one of you have seen?
So one I wanted to talk about was the John Radcliffe Hospital. It's a hospital in Oxford, and they've built a cardiology system, so it analyses cardiac scans. This is a job that cardiologists would normally do. And some kind of stats behind this, it was 60,000 cardiology scans happen every year in the NHS. 12,000 of those are misdiagnosed. So that's somebody going home, falling over and having a heart attack, or somebody that goes and has surgery who shouldn't have had surgery. It almost eliminates entirely those 12,000 errors. And that is I think it's over £1 billion a year saved to the NHS, and over 4,000 lives a year saved. Yeah. And I think when people talk about AI, and chatted with a few people before this talked about hype, but that's going into the NHS this year. And so people equate AI or machine learning with technologies like blockchain, and that always rankles with me because this isn't hype, this isn't a future-looking technology, this is here now, and this is saving lives and saving money. So.
One of the interesting things I was just reading about quite recently as well in the non-sort of health kind of area, because I think that's where there's a real biggie, is the idea of facial recognition to effectively become everybody's future passport, your bank details, everything tied to your face and who you are. Whether or not that's iris scans, etc., everything like that. I just think that's unbelievable. If you need to carry nothing around with you, no ID, nothing like that, you can be scanned and that's you.
I was going to say health as well. To me, anything where we can see an AI achieving better results than a human, for me, I think that's absolutely exciting, really exciting. And particularly health, looking for tumours in brain scans and things like that, absolutely fantastic. Doing blood analysis for analysing for diabetic diseases and things like that. I think any space where we can exceed. Just imagine trying to train a medical system on human images, on images of brain scans. How many images can a consultant see in their life to build up their knowledge? With an AI, you can throw out hundreds of thousands of millions of images to try and see patterns that a human consultant may never have seen before.
24/7 as well is a big thing as well. And also, we can use this technology and we can let third world countries use it as well. So I know there's a thing at the Paediatric Oncology Department at Newcastle, at the RVI here. They use this kind of technology to scan children in third world countries and then send out the results. And I think that kind of stuff probably wouldn't be possible without AI. Which I think is amazing.
The cost would be huge without it.
So sort of any area where it's kind of going...
For me, any area, and I was going to say health as an example as well, but any area where we can see an exceeding of human performance.
Go beyond human capability.
That's very exciting.
So I suppose then that kind of leads us into the next question I see, which is sort of, I imagine there'll be people in the audience and who are sitting probably outside of the medical field, and I think the question that they might be wondering is sort of how would AI then empower them in their own businesses? So if you were sort of outside the medical field.
Various different ways. I think something that's quite a hot topic at the moment, which I think we can apply to any industry and any business, is around data protection in GDPR. We're currently working on some intelligent automation to allow our clients to scan multitudes of folders, files, information that they may store in various places, various devices, and using intelligent automation to actually distinguish whether or not a document contains personal information about an individual. Is it, a name, a date of birth, a national insurance number, to be able to give clients and businesses a view of the volume of personal data that they're storing, to then work out whether or not they're compliant with GDPR regulations. Things that would take, so coming back to this common theme of AI sort of usurping human capability, something that would take individual resources months and months to trawl through all of this information. We're looking to implement intelligent automation in that space. So I think that's very much something that would benefit all kind of flavours of industry.
Yeah, I don't want to kind of do the big sell on Sage, but something that will help lots of small businesses out there is some of the stuff that we're doing with image recognition and OCR. So that lots of people now, they're keen in information into their accounting system. This is a big burden. Mistakes are made. You've got to pay for an accountant and all this kind of stuff. What we're moving towards now is an area of what we call invisible accounting, where you're just scanning in documents that automatically flows into the system. We have kind of fail safes as well there, and that frees up the small business owner to focus on what they want to do, and it also frees up the accountant to offer advice and to offer expert opinion, which is what they're paid for, not for correcting mistakes. And so I'd definitely say that.
I'd say it depends what data you've got. So are you an e-commerce platform or a shop? So you've got data on people's purchases. Everybody must have used Amazon. After you buy something, it recommends other stuff to you. You could do that in your kind of shop. Do you have, let's say you're a water company, you might have data on rainfall levels, on river levels, and from that you can then predict likelihood of city centres being flooded and things like that. So it just depends on the data that you've got.
How can businesses then who aren't ready to adopt it now, how can they begin to prepare themselves for it eventually becoming more commonplace?
Well, I'd say start collecting data now. If you came today with no data and asked me to build you an AI, I couldn't, because we've got no data to train it on. But if you've got 6 months of data that you can bring to the table, fantastic. We can do plenty with that.
And Helen mentioned GDPR, get permission from your customers to use that data. Otherwise it's useless. So we've kind of run into that where we've got lots of historic data at Sage. We haven't asked permission to use it, we can't use it, and that's a big thing.
And so I think one of the questions that we get asked quite a lot here is around costs. So people talk to us about, I think for a lot of people when they think about AI, they think of it being this very futuristic thing, and you always apply, the temptation is always to apply this sort of scary dystopian theme to it where the machines have risen up and taken over and everything like that. And I think I don't mean cost in terms of how much does it cost to build something, because it's very much how long is a piece of string, but when you're talking about the costs when it comes to maybe implementing it within the business, so in terms of talent who are capable of bringing that in, hiring sort of AI professionals into your business, or training your marketing staff or your sales staff to start being a little bit more savvy around the data that they might be collecting.
I'd say you don't need to do research really now. So there's plenty of third-party algorithms and APIs out there from Google, Microsoft, Amazon. There's plenty of open source learning algorithms, TensorFlow, that you can pick up and use. So you almost don't have to pay for the research. You're not going to try and invent your own algorithm now. It's all about finding people who can apply the existing stuff that's out there to your data and help you understand how it can improve in your business.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We like to do a lot around our homegrown talent, whether or not that's graduates, whether or not that's apprentices, but what we tend to look for is that sort of strong developer background, almost regardless of what the development language is, and then we start to teach the intelligent automation over the top of that, whether or not it's virtual assistants, whether it's not robotics, whatever the case may be. And I think the other element is, and you touched on it there, around open source. This needn't be expensive license-based products all the time. There's some fantastic open source products out there that are just as capable and fit for purpose, particularly for smaller businesses and smaller areas. So it needn't be as expensive as I think everybody imagines it is, because it's so cutting edge.
I think where we are, we kind of we've recruited a lot out of university, so data science out of university, so PhDs, people that have done masters, and then we want to use that team to kind of upskill the rest of the business. But it's been a challenge, if we're honest. A company I kind of look at as a gold standard in this area is Facebook. It's probably the wrong time to see Facebook, but they have a set of tools called FB Learner Flow, and I encourage anyone to have a look at that. And it's a tool that enables a kind of experiment-driven culture within Facebook where anyone, if you don't need data science or machine learning experience, can spin up a data set, they can pick from a handful of algorithms and they can try things out. And that's where I would love for us to get to at Sage, is somewhere where any developer within the business working on any problem can have access to data and algorithms to try and solve that problem. And I think that's the only way that you scale across an organisation.
Would it be accurate to say that in its current form, or indeed in relation to its future applications, that its AI is still reasonably misunderstood?
Well, blame the media for the headlines, potentially. I guess it's who's using the AI. So look at the issues that have gone on with Facebook and Cambridge Algorithmica, is it? Analytica, yeah. So they collected a lot of dodgy data and applied some kind of AI algorithms to socially profile people and target them. So I don't think it was the AI that was behaving bad, it was the humans that were behaving badly there.
Yeah, and I think, there's obviously the idea, often I think AI is an unhelpful term because people have connotations with it, they see things in movies. And I think if we call it machine learning, or we call it deep learning, it's a tool in a developer's arsenal to solve a problem for somebody. That's all it is, it's nothing more. And we're solving narrow problems at the moment, not broad ones.
So if it has a bit of an image problem then, I think, what do you think companies like Sage, like Accenture, like Hedgehog Lab can do to sort of dispel some of the, I suppose,
it seems to be two extremes. You either see it on the TV because it can beat a Go master playing Go, or you see the other extreme, it's being used for bad. So but there's plenty in between, like you say, solving business problems. There's plenty of stuff to be done.
And I think people realising that, most of us are actually using this day in, day out without even realising it, whether or not it's, your Netflix recommendations or whatever the pop-up adverts are when you're on Facebook or things like that. All of that is coming from machine learning and AI, and a lot of people just don't realise that.
We have to kind of dispel myths at Sage a fair amount. So one thing that's often said is accountants, there's going to be no accountants in 5 years' time. They're going to be AI, and you're not going to need accountants. You're going to buy some software from Sage. No more accountants. And we have to, accountants are very important to us as a business, and we have to make sure that we have this relationship with them. So we're kind of very keen to say that we are giving you tools to make your life easier, to make you more efficient, and to, at the end of the day, make you more money. And that's what we're there to do, and that's what the AI is there to do.
And I think that's one of the biggest fears and myths, isn't it? That robots will take over jobs, and it's just not the case. They're supportive tools to almost free people up to then go and work on that higher value, probably more enjoyable work.
That was the next question. So we talked about job losses, and I think perhaps that maybe people's, insecurities around how at threat their jobs might be as the machines rise up might not necessarily be as founded as they think. So
we're very adaptable as a human race. I mean, our lowest period of unemployment was during the wars, when everybody was fighting war or building munitions. Doesn't mean that we should now be fighting wars and building munitions to keep our unemployment.
Unless it's against the machines.
We adapt over time. When the mines closed and the steelworks closed, we adapt. Unemployment was up at over 12% at those years. It's back down to 4.5% or whatever now. So we adapt. Who'd have known now that there's companies worth billions of pounds that takes pictures and put fluffy ears on a picture, and that's a business.
So I suppose then, for people who might be worrying and don't need to worry, what sort of timeline would you each estimate we're looking at for kind of a wider implementation of deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence, as it might be?
So I guess it's wholly depending on the field as well.
So if we look at healthcare and medical, for example, we're seeing it's already being used.
But if we're talking about worry, I don't think our cardiologists have to worry that they're going to be out of a job. There's other things that we can use those for. My brother's a radiologist, so he looks at the cancer scans, and I kind of wind him up whenever I see him. That I work in AI. What are you doing? You're going to be. Why have you just bought this house? You're going to be out of a job in 5 years. But that's just clearly not the case. And to look at his kind of daily workload, where he's got to see hundreds of scans every single day, and there's statistics we talked about it where the accuracy level drops in the evening as the doctors get tired, and you think just those problems it's routine, and doctors shouldn't be doing this. They should be seeing patients and doing research. And I think we've got lots of big problems in this world that we need to solve, and if we can automate the simple things, we can focus on the big problems.
Spot on. And then, so I mean, so industry specific. Then we've talked very widely about healthcare, and we think that I think when we kind of put it out there on social media to sort of a wider survey group, we got 76% of people telling us that they felt that outside of their own industry, AI does mostly appeal to healthcare. But could we think of any other industries that might be more ripe for the implementation of the technology?
You mentioned the really good point around the big problems to solve, and then you get into the realms of ideas of how can we use intelligent automation and AI to do dangerous jobs effectively. So if you think along the lines of drones that could effectively go and disarm bombs rather than a human having to go in and do those tasks. I know that sounds huge, but this is the reality of where we're headed, and it's pretty exciting.
So I'd jump in and say autonomous cars would be the big thing for me, and I think the analogy I always say is that when somebody put a GPS in a phone, nobody thought about how that's going to change taxis, and I think autonomous cars are going to change cities and change the way we live in ways we can't even begin to imagine. You imagine having no car parks, you imagine having no cars that are stationary or even needed to own your own car. You can they're all on demand. You can drink and get in a car, which is a big thing in this country, especially in the northeast. I think that's really exciting.
It's going to be completely disruptive.
Yeah. So then in terms of it impacting, I suppose, other technologies and where the crossover might be, like outside of like automobiles as we've seen, where else do we think that?
So personalisation for me as well in e-commerce.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. So getting things that really are helpful recommendations, helpful suggestions. You're reading a book, this is another good book you should read.
So something that's interesting for me and something we're working on at the moment is support. So we have big contact centres, lots of customers, and using AI to augment support is a big thing, and not just to kind of reduce costs, which is the obvious benefit, but we were just talking about the kind of peak time we have at Sage at payroll year end, and systems going down and huge call volumes and stuff like that, and we want to kind of flatten that out and have a kind of predictable service that customers enjoy.
Change that customer experience.
And that's kind of my day job at the moment, is trying to use AI to solve those problems.
And I suppose what do you each think is going to be the big breakthrough for it? Or have we seen it already? In terms of, so you think about, like, someone say to me, like, if you think about sort of artificial intelligence
in the next 5 to 10 years, I think the cars is going to be
It's
going to be a massive one.
I'm interested to see where it fits in something like robotics as well, I suppose, and sort of how autonomous things like that, they might be able to become.
Drone delivery, I think it will be a big thing that will probably come in the next few years. I'm often suspicious about robotics. I think a robot for me is something that does a job. I would say a dishwasher or a washing machine is a robot effectively. It's a machine that does a job for us. This kind of skeuomorphism we see with robots now, and the handsome guy that does that Sophia robot that's often in the news, I think it's just completely unhelpful. A lot of it is kind of headline grabbing, and
it's a false representation, doesn't it, of what it's actually about.
We're not going to see androids walking around, I don't think.
Okay. Well, I mean, that kind of brings me on to, I suppose, my last question, which was, should we be worried? Like, are they coming for us eventually? Like, we're sitting here now, we're all smug, we're feeling good, but then 10 years' time, metal foot on a human skull.
All joking aside, I genuinely think there's a concern about weaponisation of AI, and I think we need to regulate specifically for that. You look at off-the-shelf components for drones, you look at being able to profile people by ethnicity or by age within you can imagine throwing that into Syria. These are components and technologies that are available now, and so it will be a serious problem.
And I guess it comes back to the point that Russell mentioned earlier on around it's almost not the technologies and the automation itself that becomes dangerous, it's the people using it.
Very good, very good.